Welcome to Mission 919, my channel devoted to information and narratives of African achievement, well-being, and prosperity. And today I want to talk about Frederick Douglass's "What to the Slave is the 4th of July," a speech that he gave for the first time on July 5th, 1852, in Rochester, New York. 1852 was a couple of years after the Fugitive Slave Act, which marked a sort of intensification and amplification of the slavery question in the United States. It made it compulsory for people in the North to help Southerners track down, capture, and bring back into captivity their escaped slaves. It also it made people who had been free in the North, but perhaps didn't have papers, or even if they did have quote-unquote papers, much more vulnerable to bounty hunters who were lurking around the cities of the North, seeking to capture people and get money for the bounties that they would receive for bringing people back down south and back into the arms of slavery. So it's also a few years before, it's 8 years before the 1860 election, which Abraham Lincoln won, and the secession crisis which followed, in which the states of the South seceded from the Union in the weeks and months following that election. And then in 1861, with the firing at Fort Sumter, the Civil War officially begins in April of 1861. So this is several years before those events are happening, but already, we see in the country a polarization developing. So that's important to know as part of the context for this speech. Now, I will say that the speech kind of is broken down into three parts. The first part talks about the past, the second part talks about the present, and the third part talks about the future. Now, the first part is laudatory. The second part, when he's talking about the present, is condemnatory. And the third part is more hopeful. So he brings his audience sort of along a journey. He talks about the virtues and the achievements of the generation that achieved independence. He talks about the righteousness of the cause of independence from the British Empire, the bravery and the integrity that the leaders of the independence fight demonstrated. But then he talks about the present, and he talks about how the 4th of July for the slave, and for him, the former slave, who is dedicated to the abolition of slavery, the 4th of July is a sham. The country betrays its Republican and democratic ideals, its ideals of freedom. All of these are a mockery from the perspective of the slave. He talks about the cruelty of slavery. He talks about the hypocrisy of the Christianity in the United States. He talks about the horrors of the quote-unquote internal slave trade, with its breaking up of families and sort of rampant sexual abuse and all other kinds of physical, emotional abuse of people. He's very scathing, and he talks about how, basically he talks about the sheer hypocrisy of the United States, um, in its practice of slavery. He talks about slavery in the United States being the worst in the world. Um, and then at the end, he talks about how um, that he's hopeful because the world has gotten smaller, and that what happens in one country is known throughout the world. So he's counting on sort of world public opinion being a sort of a kind of pressure to help end slavery. He talks about information spreading around the world, education spreading around the world, trade and commerce. So countries are no longer isolated islands that can block themselves off from the rest of the world. And so he's optimistic that the movement to abolish slavery can gain force and traction and ultimately prevail. Now, it's very his positive message at the end is a little vague in general. Even though it's 1852 and the war is going to begin in 9 years, there's no hint in his speech that he thinks that this struggle that's about to relatively soon that will be unleashed, that will lead to the end of slavery, is really around the corner. So it shows